Hey, everybody, and welcome to Skewed and Reviewed. I am Garrett. I am the creator of Skewed and Reviewed, and we cover all things pop culture, movies, entertainment, video games, hardware, travel, and more. And I'm joined, as always, with Justin and Michael, and we're going to discuss some of the latest things in conventions, video games, hardware, and a lot more. So we got a lot of stuff to cover. I wanted to start off with this news that we have a show showing up in the Phoenix area over in Glendale through April 14th. Cirque du Soleil presents Amaluna, and this is their latest show. It's set up under their traveling big top. We have several reviews for the prior Cirque du Soleil shows on our website. We've seen shows in Las Vegas, Arizona, and Washington, where our original office was based. And we will be covering the show this week, so we're looking forward to that. So we'll have a full write-up on that very soon. So, guys, before we get into some of the longer topics, I think we should mention that we have some really interesting things coming up. And one of those would be that Game Developers Conference is this week. So why don't you start us off, Michael, and why don't you tell us what Game Developers Conference is and what you're looking forward to about it?
Yeah, so Game Developer Conference, or GDC, is held in San Francisco each year. It's kind of an opportunity for the game developers to get together. There's always some really interesting content that they have related to the program, what they do at the programming, what they do from a game development standpoint. A lot of interesting conferences. They also tend to sometimes announce some of the new stuff that they're working on. I don't know that we get a lot of big announcements out of GDC every year, but it is kind of an opportunity for a lot of the folks in the field to kind of get together, kind of bounce ideas off one another. They always have really interesting topics for those who are more interested in the techie side of things. But again, it's a big conference held every year for the developers to kind of get together and kind of showcase what they're working on.
And Justin, your take on this, since you definitely work in a tech-related field as well.
Yeah, no, I mean it's definitely good to have conferences like this. That way, a lot of networking for people within the industry. It's not really like what we would expect from something like Gamescom or even PAX or anything like that. I don't think there's going to be any big announcements or anything. But for anybody who's in the industry and wants to, meet and network with other people and other developers, then it's definitely a huge opportunity for that.
It's interesting that we will have a person on site covering it. And I can say that this year we have been absolutely flooded with meeting requests to show off new games. Now, a lot of them are some of the smaller and more independent titles, but considering that is the nature of the conference, like you guys said, it's industry talk, it's a chance for industry professionals to meet with one another, so on and so forth. I know this is probably a place where deals could be done, hey, we need to license an engine, or we need someone to work network code, that sort of thing. It's probably a place where people, especially those who've been displaced recently, can look at job opportunities and things like that. It does seem like there's a lot more games on display that are being showcased, so I am curious to see what is going on. Now, you mentioned PAX, and it's very interesting because we've talked in the past that PAX, the Penny Arcade Expos, especially the ones in San Antonio, Boston, and Seattle, the Boston one's coming up, or as it's known, PAX East. Generally, these are not shows that news announcements are made at. I've always talked about the unexpected arrival of Duke Nukem Forever at PAX West, or back when it was known as PAX Prime many years ago. There were no advance meeting requests. There was no news. They just, boom, literally were there, and you booked your meeting right there on the spot. And that was rather interesting because they bypassed E3 and everything like that, just really caught us all off guard because that project had been forever in limbo. That being said, Gearbox has been very aggressive teasing that reveals are coming. Looks like a new Borderlands game, and they've made it very clear that it's coming on a date that appears to be exactly when PAX East is going on. So, Justin, why don't you start us off? What's going on, and what are you expecting?
Yeah, it's hard to gauge. I've been to PAX East a few times, and obviously it was a long time ago, but it kind of comes and goes. I remember when I went, that was the year that Tribes Ascend was announced at the event that I went to. It was kind of an interesting experience because we were walking in to on the first day, and there was a giant Tribes Ascend poster that was just on the wall. And the group I was with, we were all decently large fans of Tribes, and just walking into this convention center and seeing a new poster for a game that we had never even heard of that was Tribes related was a kind of a cool experience. But anyway, that being said, Gearbox has used PAX several times in the past. The year that I went, they were showing off Duke Nukem Forever in earnest. So I think, as you had mentioned, Borderlands 3 has been sort of teased off and on for quite a while now. And I guess there's been some late news with this as well. So, maybe we're getting a Borderlands 3 announcement. It's kind of hard to say because, again, there has been some teasing of Borderlands 3 before other events as well. There was a huge amount of speculation. I was almost certain that we would see something about it at the last E3, but alas, we didn't really see anything. But Gearbox is pretty friendly with this particular event. They seem to be pretty keen on participating in the PAX events, and I think it really fits their size. Like as a company, they're a very large, well-known developer, and if they come to PAX, then they're probably going to dominate the news cycle at PAX, whatever they show. Maybe not the same way that that they're showing would go over at E3. I think PAX is kind of the right size for them. They'll do well if they announced a Borderlands 3 there. That being said, I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot of other participants at PAX East this year, but we'll just have to kind of wait and see.
Okay, Michael, your take on this, please.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. If you look at the Twitter post, a couple of things. One is it's certainly a Borderlands theme, right? Looking at the graphics that they showed.
Unless it's Battleborn 2.
Well, here's a couple of the reasons it could be. I could think of Borderlands 3. It's interesting that the exit is number 3, which kind of would hint that it's not only a Borderlands spin-off of some sort, but it could actually officially be Borderlands 3 that they're announcing. Again, if you read it into the Twitter post a little bit much, but it's interesting they have the date of PAX East, obviously. Again, it's in the Borderlands theme. The Exit 3 would seem to indicate that it's the third installment of a Borderlands series, not like the pre-sequel, which again was a fine addition to the Borderlands game, but it wasn't a full-blown sequel. They've already done Borderlands 2 VR, so we know that it's likely not a VR-related announcement. So again, I think the number 3 Exit, along with the March 28 in Boston, Massachusetts sign in the Twitter post. And again, this is a Twitter post from March 12th that I'm referring to. They've had some others that are kind of allude to other Borderland-esque pictures, but that one seems to be the most clear of what they're going to be announcing. So yeah, I think come PAX East time, I think we're actually going to see an official announcement on Borderlands 3. The next question is going to obviously be how quickly are we going to see it released? I mean, the fact that they're picking PAX East, does that mean that it could potentially be something that they're going to announce a release date for prior to E3? Or is this just to get kind of build up and show like a preview to it, and maybe we'll see more come E3 timeframe? It's hard to say, but it looks pretty exciting from what we've seen so far.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you look at how they rolled out Borderlands, the pre-sequel, they were very active at E3. They had, that year, they had hands-on play tests there for it. They were always very big. Before, I had talked about some of the years at E3, they used to have you just come in, sit in a room, watch a demo of the thing, and there you go. And the hands-on was fairly limited, and that has grown considerably in recent years, especially with the inclusion of members of the public coming in. But they were always at the forefront. I remember Borderlands 2 had playable versions, that sort of thing, even the first Borderlands. So I would think if they have an announcement, they may even have it playable on site. And if they don't, I definitely think there's going to be playable stuff at E3. What is very interesting is that if you look at the announcements, they refer to games announcements at PAX, not one. So it's like They've released, I believe, 3 pictures. 2 of them are definitely Borderlands-esque.
I agree.
One of them is not. And so they basically are implying they've got a couple of things there. Now, we don't think it's another Duke Nukem game, but that certainly would get attention. And it's definitely not Aliens Colonial Marines 2. So, it should be interesting. I'm curious it'll be a sequel or something new, but that is what we all get to look forward to. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. I mean, it's going to be a crazy weekend. A couple of Jen and I are going to be in Anaheim for WonderCon. We have somebody covering PAX East, and then the next week you're off in Vegas covering CinemaCon, and then I think there's one other thing Star Wars Celebration's coming up right after that as well, and we all know what's going on there because they've already announced an Episode 9 panel, so that'll be keeping us busy. Now, speaking of keeping us busy, we have heard that this coming Wednesday is the date that the Disney Fox acquisition is going to be finalized. So at that time, all Fox properties that were included in the purchase now become the property and under the guardianship guidance of the Disney Corporation. With that being said, there's a lot of debate as to how quick we're going to hear about the future of certain Fox properties. How quickly are we going to hear new projects announced, or are they going to pull back and take a wait and see? One property that everyone's very curious about is the Alien franchise. There's been a lot of talk lately with the acquisition as to what's going to happen. There was some talk that James Cameron is going to try to get Neil Blomkamp's Alien 5 going forward. But Blomkamp himself has kind of distanced himself from that. However, we got the Alien Isolation animated series that was available on IGN. And then just the other day, we were given information about the 6 Alien fan films, as they were, or films from up-and-coming talents that were made available. They are going to be put out online. We had one of our staff members saw 4 of them at the panel up at Emerald City Comic-Con this weekend. She said they weren't allowed to record. She did get the intro up and got that up on the site, but she couldn't obviously record the films. So she'll have a recap of those soon. So let's go ahead and start with you, Justin. You're the major Alien expert amongst all. Well, anyway, what's your take on this?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. So yeah, as our resident Alien/Alien vs. Predator mega fan, I've obviously been following this franchise for the better part of my entire life. And it's what's interesting about it, and one of the points I wanted to make is that I distinctly remember long periods of quietness. So, obviously after Alien Resurrection, after the 2 Alien vs. Predator films, there were distinct periods of just silence on part of Fox, where, I don't think a lot of us ever really felt like the franchise had ever been completely abandoned, but, it seemed like when things didn't really go the way that Fox wanted them to with certain films in the franchise, AVP2, and Alien Resurrection, that they sort of took an approach of just shelving it for a while and then, coming back later. And we sort of just expected that. And so we've spoken in the past about the general disappointment as far as Alien Covenant in terms of financial success. So there was a lot of speculation that we would probably see one of those kind of quiet periods again, where maybe they put the Alien, the Predator franchises kind of back in the closet for a little while, and then maybe approach it a few years later. But it doesn't really feel like a quiet time because there's quite a bit of activity. We're not really seeing movie announcements or game announcements right now, but we are seeing quite a bit of other things. So we've heard rumblings of maybe a series. We still don't have an official announcement as far as like a live action or an animated series, but we've heard some rumbling about that. But as far as official things, we've seen a number of projects be announced. A comic series that's pretty active. There was the Alien Isolation animated series that debuted on IGN, which was kind of an odd move because it seemed like taking Alien Isolation for the game that came out about 5 years ago, and putting that much attention to it with a new series was kind of strange by itself. It makes more sense to me in context of if they were going to follow it up with something that's Amanda Ripley related. Because, I mean, let's be honest, Alien Isolation, it did well as far as a game goes, like a horror game, but it didn't really do as well as Sega was hoping. And I think that what sort of makes sense to me is if they want to do Amanda Ripley related content, maybe Fox is concerned that not everybody knows about the first chapter of her story, which would be Alien Isolation, the video game. So it sort of makes sense to me. That's probably why they would invest in that kind of project. And now we're getting a series of short films that are alien related. There's about 6 of them that we will be seeing between now and Alien Day of April 26th. So the Alien Day every year is 4/26. So usually they kind of hold that date for some sort of announcement or some sort of event. So hopefully we get something there. I'm eagerly awaiting these short films. Fan films and short films in general, they don't always have the best of reputations, but I've seen a number of short films that are actually incredibly impressive. There was a Darth Vader one that I don't know either of you have seen on YouTube that was absolutely incredible in terms of production quality. I just recently watched the teaser for these Alien short films, and I was pretty impressed. Like they look like they have a decent level of production value that these really could go a long way. And I'm obviously, as an Alien fan, very eager to see them. And hopefully this kind of leads into something else, like something bigger, maybe. And if not, then at least there's some sort of activity going on in the franchise right now. And the big concern was that Disney might also kind of push to shelve the Alien franchise for a little while. But with the amount of activity that we have, I just don't really see it happening, which is, great news for us.
And Michael, we'll get to your comments in a moment. And that's the thing you mentioned, Justin, about the fan films, is that there are several Alien fan films out there. This one comes with the push of the studio and PR firms behind it. So obviously these are pretty big. I remember a while back under Tungle, there was there was a call for people to submit their short Alien fan films, and I wonder if this is how it came to be. I actually had a pitch for one called Alien versus Predator, and it was basically about a crew that was on a ship, and there was an alien outbreak, but of course there was a bean counter from corporate, and they were always looking for ways to save money, and there was going to be like one scene where they went to confront the alien, and all of a sudden the bean counter showed up and turned off the lights because they were wasting electricity, and therefore, time is money, that sort of thing. But it never, obviously got out of the concept stage because I thought it was too much of a one-joke premise. So, Michael, your thoughts on this, please.
Well, it's kind of interesting. Justin makes points about the fact that we're seeing the IGN short, kind of the web series, which kind of focused a bit on Alien Isolation. We've got Alien Isolation, which didn't really sell as well as Sega had hoped, but still had a pretty popular following. Alien Blackout, which is the mobile game, which follows Amanda Ripley as well. I know they say they're not really related, but again,
she references Alien Isolation's events in the game.
Exactly. We talk about the short films. So there is a lot of introductory stuff for Amanda Ripley that's starting to surface now. Again, with the IGN short films kind of taking the Alien Isolation cutscene type stuff, Alien Blackout game. So maybe we're starting to look at maybe doing a true sequel to Aliens, but featuring Amanda Ripley, kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily related to Alien Isolation, but maybe utilizing that as a launching point for that character to kind of get some, excitement behind her to maybe lead a film itself in that sort of environment. So yeah, it is interesting that we're all of a sudden seeing all this activity where traditionally we would have expected things to be a little bit, I don't know, quieter based on the last Alien movie, but maybe they're looking to take it in a different direction and utilizing the information, all the lore that was introduced in Isolation now with Alien Blackout, and with the IGN stuff to kind of get a broader audience, attach itself to more people to get them interested in that particular character, and maybe we'll see something come from that.
And it's interesting too. Let's not forget the Dark Horse comic series that follows up Alien Isolation that features Amanda Ripley. There's the shooter game that's still as yet to be announced, but if you remember when the announcement for Alien Blackout came out and that it was revealed to be a mobile game, even in the press release, they were very clear to say this is not the massive alien shooter that is still coming. Details to come at a later date. So, we know that there's a PC and next generation console, at least next gen in terms of PS4 and Xbox One, that is coming. It's said to be a massive online alien shooter. So it definitely seems like stuff. I would like to see something like that sooner rather than later because, if you remember back to last year, 426 came and we all had all this speculation, we're going to see this and we're going to hear this and we're going to see this and we're going to hear that, and we didn't get as much as we thought we might. That being said, I think they're definitely gearing up for something because by that date it's going to firmly be in the hands of Disney, and Disney is definitely aware of the date. They're aware of the significance for the fans, and I think they know people are going to be looking. So let's swing over to the next topic, and I think, Michael, you can lead on this one. Let's talk Fallout 76. It looks like it has weathered the early storm and is continuing to progress. People are still playing it. Some people are discovering it, and now we have something new. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so obviously the new Fallout 76 massive DLC patch, whatever you want to call it, that was just released, the Wild Appalachia update, I guess is what they're referring to it. And it adds a couple of new items. It does a new quest line based on Wasted on Nuka Shine. What you'll kind of notice with Wild Appalachia is there's a big alcoholic reference, I guess, to this. New quest lines that are feature the alcoholic type backdrop. They have a new crafting system which allows you to brew and distill your own alcohol that you can both sell and then obviously utilize for yourself. New seasonal event, again, utilizing the robots as quote unquote NPCs, as leading a parade, that sort of thing. Some balances that we tend to see. They talked about energy and heavy weapon balances to try to balance out the gameplay. Interestingly, they finally introduced a player reporting mechanism. So for people playing who come across other players who are not being the most friendly or appropriate in the game, now there's a way to report those players. So again, it's one of the biggest updates for Fallout 76, and true to Bethesda's form, they tend to add things that make their games better down the road. We saw this with Elder Scrolls Online. That didn't release to as much fanfare as a lot of people liked or wished it had. Several years now, we have multiple content that's been released for it. It's survived where a lot of other online multiplayer games have not. Fallout 76, again, we've kind of weathered the initial disappointment for a lot of folks. There's still a lot of talk we saw that the roadmap was released by Bethesda a couple weeks ago on the types of changes they plan to make throughout the year, this being one of the bigger ones. So yeah, I haven't had a chance to really get in and play it myself yet. But they did release some interesting things to kind of add a little bit of life to it and hopefully keep players interested to continue playing it throughout the year.
And Justin, your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that Bethesda is supporting the game. Obviously, I think they need there's quite a bit they need to do. As I've sort of mentioned in the past, it's not really my game right now, but I could definitely see myself playing it. I'll probably check in a little bit later this year. They have a pretty good roadmap of plans and ideas that they want to do to add content to the game, and obviously I think they're doing a good job of supporting the title.
Yeah, and I definitely think we know that there's other stuff coming. I think it's a good step in the right direction. I think that when they get to their events, everything from QuakeCon to E3. I think it is definitely going to have to be addressed what some of the long-term plans are beyond the DLC. So it'll be very interesting to see what they have. Well, guys, we covered a lot of topics this week, and we also wanted to mention that I can never say the Japanese name, but Shikiro's Shadows Die Twice is coming out this week, so we can definitely look forward to reporting on that. A lot of other good stuff coming up in the weeks ahead. Remember, if you're in the Arizona market, we've got Cirque du Soleil's Amaluna in town. And until then, take care and have a great week, everybody.